is going to, well, she was right there, wasn't she?
She's over
No,
here.
there she is. Anita is going to do a little presentation of some markers, so I'll turn it over to them.
6 of us were here a couple of years ago, and I put together a DVD of just the highlights. There were several volumes of material, pictures and whatnot that we took, but I put together just the highlights. I was determined that it not be longer than an hour, and so I couldn't include very much of our 4 or 5, 6 day trip. But I put together a DVD and I gave all the people that came with us, and I'm going to present some of these to. The first one is Catfish Martin, Catfish Lowry, and
we thank him for
yes, we're very, very grateful to you, and also give that one to Jerry if you would.
I will do it. Thank you, ma'am.
And I'm handing his to him because he's behind that camera there, but I want to give one to each other family represented here, a distant family, and so I'm going to ask Linda or Dolly, Candy, not Dolly, to come up and receive this DVD. Now, after I made the 6, for the 6 of us who went, I disassembled my program and I couldn't make any more from that, and several people in Texas asked me for a copy and I didn't have a copy, and I told them I was not going to make any more, but I discovered a shortcut. I set my camcorder in front of my TV, I played one that I had, and that's where these copies came from. They were camcordered from TV, and when they play on my TV, my DVD player, but there were some skips on it. I don't think the skips are on the DVD. I think that was due to my player, but at any rate, on mine, they skip a little bit and then they go right on. So, all right, and ladies, Dorothy, if you'll come up and take this for you and
Greg.
the Hill, Greg, yes, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Hill,
Joe.
Joe Hill. Here's you a copy. And Roxanne, I think probably you've earned the right to.
Well, I'll do a
Yes,
ticket for Sam.
Okay, take it for Sam,
Thank you.
and you can share it
Roxanne.
with, with the others. Okay, anybody else? Did I miss?
We want to thank, I know Linda, the Kinney family wants to thank, I believe, Greg and Sam and Roxanne and Dorothy, whoever was out there cleaning up the Kinney cemetery
yes.
the other day. I know they're appreciative of that. And
Yeah, we did a little bit, but it was fine. It was fun just to get out and do something.
I think it's important that we remember our ancestors, because without them, sometimes I sit and think about it, and I think of all the tiny little decisions, the tiny little actions and accidents that were required so that those of us here and our families could have life, and that it gives it a new meaning and a new importance to me, because each of these people that we're celebrating was necessary for our existence. And now we have Janine and Beulah to give us some history.
This is my reporter. You better have some loud.
Use your school teacher voice.
I will. I'm here to speak for our ancestor, Allen Godwin. Allen was born in 1788, just a few years after we become a United States of America. North Carolina, where I was born, wasn't even a state yet. As a young man, when the War of 1812 was nearly over, I enlisted in the Army for 7 days. Washington, D.C. had been burned by the British. My pa, James, died when I was about 16 years old, so I had to have a guardian to help manage my things, because women didn't understand about money back then. Land trades were good for me, for in 1821 I won a land lottery in Georgia. But in a few years I'm back in North Carolina. Then it's on to McNairy County, Tennessee by 1840. By 1842, we was settled in Mississippi. The first love of my life was Polly Green. We was married in February of 1809 in Cumberland County, North Carolina. We had several little girls that we lost when they were young, just babies. But 3 children survived, and they were John Allen Godwin, who's a great grandpa to a bunch of us on our daddy's side. Then there was Penny Godwin and Calvin Godwin, who was a cripple. After Polly died, it was my good fortune to be back in Cumberland County, North Carolina, where I met Martha Patsy Reynolds. She was much younger than I. However, she consented to marry me and move back to Mississippi, where my children were waiting for me. We finally settled near Blue Mountain, Mississippi. Work was hard, but we had slaves to take care of a lot of it. Our family continued to grow. We had 9 children of our own. 2 of our boys were crippled like Polly's Calvin. One of our daughters, now this gets down to us, one of our daughters, Pearlie, married a Hill and moved west to Texas, where she's raising 3 of her grandchildren, one of whom is Nolly Hill. Nolly married Enoch Godwin, who was our parents and your grandparents. In most of my life, I was a farmer raising cotton and tobacco. By the time I was 72, I'm a Baptist minister. Also the first moderator of the Tippah Benton Baptist Association, which was organized in 1860. My last years were spent among the rolling hills and fertile bottoms a few miles west of Blue Mountain. Some of my married children stayed here. Some of them went to Texas. This is where we get in on both sides. Polly and my son John Allen married Liva Ann Smith and ended up living in Central Texas. Martha's and my daughter Pearlie married James Hill and lived in Central Texas also. They were in the next door counties. John Allen's son, Enoch, married Pearlie's granddaughter, Nolly, and so they had 9 children and about 25 grandchildren, of which 2 of us are here, and 8 grandchildren, and a grandchild-in-law are here. And I will turn it over to the reporter.
She mentions Allen Godwin here, but Polly Green Godwin married Allen Godwin on February 15th, 1809 in Cumberland, North Carolina. Allen and Polly were both about 21 years old when they married, and they lost 2 girls as infants before their first son, John Allen, was born about 1815 in North Carolina. And then they moved to Washington County, Georgia, and had 2 more children. A daughter, Penny, was born somewhere around 1818 there in Georgia. And then their son, Calvin, was born probably about 1820 in Georgia.
Good evening.
And Polly died somewhere either about the time Calvin was born or shortly thereafter. And she was about 32 when she died.
Did you get
And
it
we
there,
believe
sir?
she was probably buried in Georgia. Although if I understand correctly, her grave has not been found.
It's gonna be shortly.
And then sometime between 1822 and 1825, Allen, who was approximately 34 years old, decided he needed help raising his
I
children.
didn't ask you how you
And he
found
went
out
back
about
to North Carolina and married 18-year-old Martha
Unloaded.
Patsy Reynolds. She was known as Patsy, I understand.
That's over, huh?
So then Patsy and Allen had the following children. They had Levi Simmons, who was born around 1825 in North Carolina.
They won't cook quite as well.
They had Jacob G. Godwin, born around 1827 in North Carolina. Elisha H. Godwin, born around 1832, either in North Carolina or Alabama. Eli P. Godwin, born around 1834, maybe in North Carolina or Tennessee. Lucinda Paralee Godwin, born around 1840 in Tennessee. Elijah Godwin, born around 1840. Acrel H. Godwin, born around 1842 in Tennessee. And then Letitia F. Godwin, or I think it's Francis Godwin, was born around 1849 in Mississippi. And Polly and Allen had by then settled Tippah County, Mississippi here. Now, John Allen Sr., as he's known now, married Aletha Spencer, and they had 10 children. And that 10th child was born about 8 months after John Allen Sr., and 3 of his daughters died during the 1853 fever epidemic near Philadelphia, Arkansas. John Allen Jr. was their 10th child, and he married Olivia Ann Smith, and their son, Enoch, was my grandfather. Now, Penny married a James Callicut, and they had 7 children, and they stayed here in Tippah County, Mississippi. Calvin the cripple, he married way late in life, but he stayed in this area also. They had Levi Simmons, who married a Julia Frances Dickey, and they had 6 children. Let's see. Jacob G. Godwin married Lavinia C. Whittington, and they had children. And then Elisha Godwin married Martha Lucinda Jane Kinney. He died during the Civil War and left his wife with 4 small children and 1 on the way. Dr. Joe Godwin Martin is a descendant of Elisha, and Joe Hill is also descended through Elisha's widow, Martha Lucinda Jane Kinney Godwin Hill. Martha Lucinda Jane married Samuel Hill after she was widowed, and that Samuel Hill was the father of was the brother of James Hill, who is my descendant on my grandmother's side.
Not your descendant, your ancestor.
Yeah.
Your ancestor.
One of my ancestors. But anyway, so we became cousins in that. Eli P. Godwin was also crippled, but they said he could ride a jennet and use a lady's side saddle to get around and direct the workers on his farm. He married a Dolly Crank, and they had 6 children. Then we had Lucinda Paralee Godwin, who married James Hill and had 9 children. Their 3rd child was P.G., or Pleasant Gideon Hill, and he was the father of my grandmother, Nolly Bell Hill Godwin. Nolly Bell's mother had died when she was 4, and she was then raised by her grandmother, Paralee. Elijah Godwin, and I forgot to mention that you were descended. No, you're not descended. Wait a second. You're descended through Letitia.
Through Letitia.
Let's see. Elijah married Minerva J. and had 8 children. Sam and Greg Godwin are 2nd and 3rd great-grandchildren of Elijah Godwin.
No, we
Elijah.
would have been that Martha Lucinda and Elisha, not Elijah.
Y'all weren't Elijah?
We're with Joe. Or I mean,
With
Mr. Lowry is a group. Because
okay.
when you said Martha Lucinda Kinney, that's our group.
That's
Okay,
where
I
we
thought
come
it was
in.
through Minerva and
No, ma'am.
Elijah. Okay,
It's Elisha.
I apologize.
That's all right, because the Elijah and Elisha are
Yeah, I wrote it
confusing.
down as Elijah, but it's Elisha.
Okay.
We're the same as
no
Catfish
idea.
Lowry. There, if you
Y'all
get,
are
he'll
through the
help
same
you.
people as Dr. Martin. I mean, y'all are through
Yes,
the same line
yes,
as
ma'am.
Dr. Martin.
That's it.
Okay, and then there was April Godwin, who died from measles while he was in the Confederate Army. And then Frances Godwin married John W. Kinney and had 8 children. Martha Patsy Godwin lived with Tish, or Tisha as she was known, and John for about 20 years after Alan died. The last 12 years before she died, they had moved here to Tippah County, and they had moved from Tippah County to Hardeman County, Tennessee. And Polly was buried in the Kinney family cemetery near Whiteville.
And that's these Kinneys over here.
Yes. And Glenda Kinsey Doyle is the second great grandchild of Tisha and John Kinney.
No.
And
No, first great grandchild.
first great. Okay.
I
first-
am. and
Yes.
she's-
And then
she's
Candy's the second great
great.
grandchild. So, I was just to see if I missed anything.
We're going here in a little bit, aren't we going to the Macedonia church right here?
John Allen moved to Arkansas, started a church before his family moved on to Texas. Penny was stayed in Tippah County, Mississippi, married James Calicut. And evidently, Penny and James Calicut amassed a tidy fortune before the Civil War wiped them out.
That's pretty neat.
See, Lucinda Perley Hill moved to Texas, and Calvin chose to stay back.
The Godwins that we were descended from, he died in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he got shot in Murfreesboro in a battle there, and they retreated and went back to Chattanooga, and he's in a cemetery. So whichever one that is the one we come from.
Well, Joe Godwin Martin's
But it's pretty neat.
mother is
Martha
this
Lucinda.
Sam Houston's sister. Joe Godwin Martin's mother was my great aunt.
It keeps going into
Okay.
marriage, so I think it's
My great aunt. Her and this Samuel Houston was married to Martha Lizzie. That was my grandma and grandfather. So that's where, I don't know what line or whatever, but that's, I mean, we come, that's where we are.
So he was I knew he died during the Civil War.
Yeah. So which one was he? Which
Elisha.
Elijah. Yeah.
Yes, Elisha.
I get
Elisha
mixed up which
Houston,
is
wasn't
which.
it?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Elisha H.
Uh-huh,
Yes.
because I went to Chattanooga and saw that. In my head, my
I
head.
still forget, I've read it. It's
gotta be written down.
Oh. Yeah. Well, that's how I know it. I got.
Okay.
She's got most of
And
it.
I've seen them years ago, and I've studied through them.
I make one comment. We were
I
just
still gotta go back
discussing
to
how many of the
right now I
Godwins
can go
were
down the alley.
ministers or preachers in the family, and it still
Right.
goes on even in our family.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty incredible.
There were a lot.
Alan had so many kids,
Alan
and then that runs all
evidently
through,
died
you know,
without a
going
will.
back up, but they go different directions
Sam?
to get back there.
Okay.
Janine, we've got a picture here of the ones that, of this, the parents of this infant daughter right here.
Okay.
Is that right?
That's my grandmother. That's my.
He doesn't even know it yet, but I have the name of this infant daughter I came across in his aunt's paperwork.
Good.
I just found it. It was written
Teresa,
on.
show it to our camera here as well, and to Catfish's camera. Which one?
That's right.
The bottom picture.
Grandma, we live with her.
I just found a piece of paper, Sam, and
There's
it
no
only
doubt
mixed
about
up.
Well, and that's their
That baby.
Elisha at the top.
Show it, show it.
Nancy Eileen.
When Aunt Elena used to say, and that was my dad's sister,
I think we
used
need
to say,
the bottom
you know, they lost bottom picture. I've never seen this tombstone here, and that looks like a new one that somebody else.
Dr. Joe says that you have his book like this, is that right? You have his book? Okay.
I was going to take it up there, but then I didn't go.
Well, he said that you had it, so, okay.
All right.
Evidently, Alan died without a will, and his children that he had with Polly felt like they got cheated out of their inheritance. In fact, the last daughter, Letitia, and her husband probably ended up with most of the land and a lot of the thing, but they did take care of their mom all those years. Catfish Lowry is a descendant of the third pastor, I believe, of Allen's church, the Macedonian Baptist Church. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was the first pastor,
He was the first pastor.
and that's when Macedonia was right there, right across the road.
Oh, really?
Where these two little hollows join
Yeah.
is Macedonia Springs, and this was Macedonia Church. As a matter of fact, this is Macedonia Cemetery, what they call Old Blue Mountain, but it's not Old Blue Mountain. Old Blue Mountain's about a half mile over there, and destroyed by loggers, almost.
Pulpwooders.
I think there's 7 stones left over there, one of which is a Revolutionary soldier, by the way.
Oh, my goodness. That's the Union Valley. No, that wouldn't be Union Valley.
Old Blue Mountain.
Okay,
Oh,
scratch that.
Now Union Hill is across the other side of the road from Godwin out here.
Okay.
We hope that y'all have a little better understanding of how we're all related today, and we're going to turn this over to Anita.
You want to go get the marker?
Okay.
Well, I'm going to fill in some time here while Paul goes to get the marker. I wondered if you had
We had markers made loud. We had markers made for our direct ancestors that they have the reference on them, Godwin Hill and related families, and underneath that is the Facebook sign. So that will direct anyone who's coming to look onto our Facebook page. And these markers were actually the title of Ruth's book is Godwin Hill and Related Families. And
What's the name of our Facebook?
it's,
Yeah.
yes, and you'll find that on each marker that we have. These markers were designed by a friend of mine, an old-time friend of mine, who is the descendant of slaves from Petersburg, Virginia. He spent his early years in the Navy. He was an electronic technician in the Navy for 6 years. Then he got out and went back to school. He had saved enough money to go back to school, and he majored in painting and printmaking. We've got one of the higher ranked art schools, public art schools in the country in Richmond, Virginia. But his ancestors were artisan slaves. If you know what that means. They were the craftsmen, the shoemakers,
They made everything.
The leather.
They made everything. They
Blacksmith.
were
Black-
the ones who built
blacksmith.
the houses, and they passed down often their trade from father to son, because that was the way they were more valuable to the slave owners. They were more likely to be treated well. And I wanted to make a plea to all of you who are looking at graves and gravestones, not to forget the slaves, because there's a big movement up in Virginia, where I am, and Washington, D.C. area, to try for the former families of former slaves to put their family histories together, their genealogies. And the University of Virginia has a site, the Virginia Historical Society has a site, as does the Library of Virginia. So if you run across any of those, it would be important to document them and let somebody know. Well, here comes our, any questions or comments by anybody in the crowd summarizing our visit? Well, I want to say that I'm struck by the pioneering nature of our grandparents and their forebears, how much guts they must have had to leave whatever was relatively familiar to them up in Virginia and that area and move out west where the land was available and there was more opportunity. And then after raising families here and just picking up with some of their neighbors and going on. And I wonder how much of it was their Baptist heritage. They went in groups, community groups of Baptists from place to place. So it's family and community. Would you say that's what Long Cove is? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it went on to Texas. And the place where our grandparents lived in Texas, settled in Texas, and homesteaded there, they were rolling hills like these. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita.
And I think that they were very independent thinkers.
Watch for fire ants.
Just to your left, Jennifer.
You're gonna try the crayons in the chart.
I think you hit the cement. You hit the cement.
She put this up.
Thank you.
For a while, it was in 3 different colors.
I remember reading in Aunt Ruth's book that way back when some of us were Quakers and some
I think
were,
those were the Coxes.
yes, and there were some Mennonites from the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, which is not far from where I live. And I attended a Mennonite burial a few years back, and it struck me very similar to Baptist. But they have a whole community of Mennonites up there in the valley.
Any of them named Cox? No.
This is Barnett.
You know, Mennonites moved into the Whiteville area. There's a lot of them, and I was at a library meeting in Jackson, and one of the ladies asked me about.
It ain't big enough.
You're not big enough. That's why I needed butcher paper last night. Anyway, one of the ladies asked me. They said, "Isn't that where the Mennonite bakery is?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, but I was there first." Meaning I was in Whiteville before the Mennonites ever came.
We want to thank all our visitors and all our presenters, and we're going to put an end to our program now and let Candy do her tracing and everybody get acquainted with everybody and tell us how you're kin to all these gravestones around here.
Oh boy.